And part of the reason why the Christian women out there are disappointed when they look out into the dating landscape, and even amongst the Christian men, they see, he might be morally upright and, he's not living a sinful lifestyle, certainly not hedonist and that kind of thing. But how is he actually demonstrating that he is a protector of the realm? Because if he's not doing that, what is my role in helping him? Other than pop out babies for him and feed him, to what end? Just to replicate the species so that we don't die out? No. The end is supposed to be the defense of Christendom. And so the men have to first sign themselves up for the Great Commission and go out and spread the truth and evangelize, whether or not they have a wife, whether or not they have support.
Beholden to Truth. Christ culture. White identity. And fitness lifestyle. Red pilling the masses. On the front lines. Against the synagogue of Satan.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Beholden To Truth. Hanging out, same spot as usual, outside the gym, having my little happy hour. You guys know my ritual. I sit here, I get caffeinated with my pre-workout. I try to get my mind shifted from the 9-to-5 workplace into the self-improvement, fitness-oriented kind of feelings before I go into the gym. And there's like a transition, about a 30-minute to an hour-long period where I sit in my car, which is like my mobile temple, my mobile office, my little sanctuary. And I just think about the world. So what's on the agenda for us to discuss today? I need to digest some of the content that I've been seeing on Instagram. Good stuff you guys have been sending me, reels and posts and that kind of stuff. The gender stuff seems to be hot lately. Lately, as in like the last 5 years, but even within the conservative side of society, we're still like struggling to figure out what the deal is. Why even men and women who are both conservative are still struggling to come together, make families, respect each other, do what we need to do with our limited time here on earth. And so I'm looking at both sides of that discussion. I'm looking at older women's commentary speaking to younger women, and I'm looking at older men's commentary speaking to younger men. And then I'm listening to the younger men express their grievances and the younger women express theirs. And so I'm trying to, as I said, digest all of this and give my 2 cents on it. I talk in previous vlogs about the woman problem, the disrespect for male authority, the obstinate behavior, the self-importance of women to believe that they don't owe men anything just by virtue of them being women and men being men. And then I talk about the unimpressive nature of modern men who aren't doing much. And so that's kind of what I want to go into. It's going to be both sides. I'm not going to just hammer on the women and I'm not going to just hammer on the men, but with this kind of Disney-like fantasy goggles of princesses who need to be put on a pedestal and who are the number one pursuit of life. Your life is about either going and obtaining sex or going and obtaining a wife. And while the Bible does instruct us to go forth and be fruitful and find love, it's not the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to live in relationship with God. That's number one for both genders. And if you elevate finding a spouse above a relationship with God and trying to evangelize, then you end up compromising your integrity and your values and the ultimate mission at hand, which is to go out and speak the truth. And this is what men in particular have really fallen guilty of. They have put the pursuit of women's attention, whether that's lifelong marriage or casual sex, They have put so much emphasis on obtaining those things that they are willing to emasculate themselves in the pursuit of achieving those goals. And so when a woman says, I expect you to treat me like a princess, the man doesn't say like, yeah, no. How about no? I'm not going to do that. You're actually my helper. Women were actually put on this planet to be helpers of men. We're not here to serve you. So what we have to restore is the dynamic of women accepting that they are the helpers of men and men expecting that from women, not the other way around. We have things inverted right now where women believe that they should be chased and pursued by men who are just at their beck and call to fulfill everything that they want and to do everything that they say. And that is the inversion of the patriarchal model that God designed. The pioneer woman was the companion of the man, not the leader of the man, who was there to provide him with an offspring and to help him on his journey. It's his journey. It's his obligations that she is helping with. She's not directing them. She's not making the calls on the strategy. She's not educating him. She is there to help and enable the man's goals. Now, obviously, the caveat to all of this is that that dynamic only works if a male's goals are righteous in nature. And that's who I'm speaking to. I'm not speaking to non-Christian men, and I'm not speaking to non-Christian women. So let's just put that on some other side. That we're not talking about that. We're talking about if you're a Christian woman wanting to find a Christian man, and if you're a Christian man wanting to find a Christian woman, I'm explaining the dynamic. And that is, as a man, your focus should be on protecting the realm, not go find a wife and protect my wife at all costs. Even if society is falling apart, I'm going to protect my wife and only my wife. You can't elevate your wife above Christendom. That's not how it works. That's idolatry. And part of the reason why the Christian women out there are disappointed when they look out into the dating landscape, and even amongst the Christian men, they see, he might be morally upright and, he's not living a sinful lifestyle, certainly not hedonist and that kind of thing. But how is he actually demonstrating that he is a protector of the realm? Because if he's not doing that, what is my role in helping him? Other than pop out babies for him and feed him, to what end? Just to replicate the species so that we don't die out? No. The end is supposed to be the defense of Christendom. And so the men have to first sign themselves up for the Great Commission and go out and spread the truth and evangelize, whether or not they have a wife, whether or not they have support. And once they are doing that, the women will recognize and see the hard work of the men and the danger that they put themselves in and all the risk that they assume. And that will arouse the attention and the desire to serve and help those actually productive, morally upright men who are fighting. That's the thing. Men are not fighting. And so women have, even if they have that natural instinct going all the way back to the beginning of civilization that I'm supposed to serve a man who is out there getting beat down in the battle of whether that's going out and collecting food, defending ourselves from foreign threats, being active in the spiritual war of the multi-millennia history of Christendom. A woman looks at a man and she doesn't see him participating in any of that. She's like, you work a 9-to-5 office job in an air-conditioned building. You go to Walmart to pick up groceries. How hard is your life? Like, how much support do you really need? Other than just showing up and giving you some babies, do you actually really need my support? And the answer is no. In the same way that modern feminist women have come to the somewhat false epiphany that they don't need men because they don't economically need men anymore. They're not financially dependent in order for them to feed themselves and house themselves and clothe themselves. They think that combination of providence means they no longer need men. I mentioned in my vlog before that that's completely false, because they are still unconsciously dependent on men's protection. They just don't see it. When you call the police, you call the fire department, when the country goes to war, who maintains the electrical grid, who's doing all of the plumbing for society, all the infrastructure. We all know that that's men, and that we create the protections of the civilization that we live in. Women just choose to completely ignore that and believe that they're not actually being protected by men. The fact that they're bringing in a paycheck means that men are irrelevant. I debunked that in previous vlogs. But with men who are not actively fighting literally anything, the only fight that they might have is a stressful day at work. And that's the one thing they believe, that when they come home from a stressful day at work, they need a wife to pat them on the head and give him a massage and feed him some food, do his laundry. And she does. She does need to be doing all of those things. But that's not a righteous fight. That's just sustenance. That's just staying alive. That's not that admirable. How I think of women are medics. And I want to bring this home. This is the key to thinking about how women should exist alongside a man. A woman should exist as a nurturer and as a medic who provides support and healing for a man. Not guidance, not direction, certainly not authority over. But when the man comes home and is bruised and battered and feeling discouraged from the battle that he is in, the woman is supposed to be there and bandage him up, nurture him, tell him that she's proud of him for doing the work and that the work is important, and that no matter how vicious the battle is, she will be by his side. And the children that we have together are going to carry on this battle. Our sons are going to inherit the sword and go to fight just like you did. And our daughters are going to go find men just as righteous as you and support them. That's supposed to be the dynamic. But right now, you have men coming home from their battle. It's not a spiritual battle. They're not engaged with the culture wars. They're not engaged with the spiritual war. They're not engaged with the military war. Their battle is having a stressful day at work. Working in a cubicle. Working in some service industry. Working at retail. And so a woman looks at that and she's just like, you don't really need a medic for that. I understand you might be tired and stressed, but seriously, you need somebody who is a full-time support of that. Whereas you look at the few men who are out there actually going to real battles, whether it's on a physical, level, going out into a battlefield, shooting guns, flying airplanes and tanks, getting shot at, police officers, firefighters, and that kind of thing. Not everybody occupies that role because the need isn't that great. In this technological modern age, all men are not engaged in a physical ongoing threat. And so men are supposed to be protecting something. And so if they're not having to be pulled into these tactile confrontations, you have to then pick up the sword and go fight somewhere else. And that is the culture war and the spiritual war and the political war. Otherwise, you're just an unimpressive man who isn't fighting for anything meaningful. All you're doing is fighting to stay alive, fighting to be able to keep shoveling food in your mouth and have clothes on your back and a roof over your head. That's just not that impressive. You genuinely don't need a medic for that. You don't need someone whose life is devoted to supporting that mission. And so do you see where I'm calling out both genders on this? One, men, you got to go fight. Go fight for something that is meaningful. Ideally, you'll be fighting for Christendom. Hopefully, simultaneously, you're fighting for the identity of your nation and protecting it, which involves political education, political activism, pushing back on an anti-Christ culture. That's the call to action for men. The call to action for women is to accept and embrace your role. Find those men who, by the way, are still not going to be perfect just because they're righteous men who are out there fighting and getting bruised and beaten up in that process. If your expectation is, okay, I appreciate the fact that he's doing all that. That's good because there's not enough men doing that. But, he uses this language that's kind of coarse, and he says things that hurts people's feelings, and he has these opinions that are controversial, and you got to get over that. You got to get over the fact that men are not women. We don't communicate like women, and we don't have the same purposes out in society. Therefore, we don't have to conduct ourselves the same. And that's the problem, is women expect men to conduct themselves publicly, socially, the same way that they conduct themselves. Got to let go of that. And you got to let go of this, I don't need a man. I shouldn't be dependent on a man. I'm not willing to adopt the risk of ever being dependent on a man. Actual codependence is a beautiful thing. I mean, just imagine a man who's in the middle of the Civil War and he gets back from the battlefield. He saw his friends get blown to smithereens. Their limbs are flying off, heads getting blown up, cannonballs whizzing by their face. The day ends. One side of the army goes back to their tents. The other side goes back to their tents. After a few weeks, you finally get to go home to your wife. Her role is to bandage him back up, nurture him and take care of him. And as I said before, tell him that she's proud of the risks he's taking going out into that battlefield to try to protect his people and his nation and do what is right. So hopefully all of this makes sense. That, what I mentioned before, there's princess women and there's pioneer women. Hopefully you understand the difference now. The pioneer woman says, no matter where my man goes, whatever mission he commits himself to, I will be there to take care of him and help him heal as he goes through that battle. The princess woman says, fuck the battle. I'm the prize. I'm where all the attention should be. Your life should revolve around me first. And so when you're in a relationship with a woman like that, you can't be productive in the actual battle because she'll be constantly griping and being disobedient to the priorities that you lay out. She's going to say, why don't I have this? Why can't we go do that? Why does it have to be like this? That's not obedience. So, I hope all of that makes sense. That's just some thoughts on the gender dynamic and what we need men to be focused on and what we need women to be focused on. Women need to be pioneer women, not princesses. Men need to be fighters, not exclusively providers. They need to be protectors of the realm. And then you will merit a good pioneer medic wife when you're actually doing something that means something. That's my prescription for how we come back together. Women will find it very, very fulfilling to know that their efforts in supporting that man are helping us win that battle because they can't do it. Women cannot go out and, whether it's politically or militarily, culturally, influence society in a positive direction. They genuinely can't do it because men won't listen to them. They won't take them seriously. And they don't have the physical capabilities to carry that battle forward when necessary. They don't even have the hormonal level to handle confrontation to the same degree. I mean, think about it. You tell a woman, shut up, bitch, and she's done. She's an emotional cripple. She will ball up like aluminum foil, start crying. That's not nice. You shouldn't talk that way. No man should ever use that language. Like, women as a group cannot handle the difficult confrontations and the difficult conversations and the tone of battle, the violent language, the violent behaviors. Women cannot handle that. And so they have to step down. You guys know what I mean? I mean, think about it. Go tell a man who's actually in the battle, who is willing to devote his life for the battle. Tell him, shut up, bitch. He's going to say, no, you shut up, fucking loser. I'll fucking kill you. You want to go fight? That's a man's response. The woman's response to being verbally assaulted, as I said, meltdown. And this is why, once we have elevated women to positions of authority, everybody has to censor the way they speak, because women can't handle that. They can't even handle the verbal fight. This is why when you're in a relationship with a woman, you can't speak to her the same way you speak to your adult male friends, adult male coworkers. Once again, this is why women are counterproductive in the workplace, because you have to handle them with kid gloves. You can't communicate bluntly to them because of their emotional sensitivity. So, and by the way, hopefully to make it clear, I'm not saying that that's how men should talk to women. What I'm explaining is that when it comes to confrontation, conflicts of cultures, conflicts of religions, conflicts of nations, you don't think things are going to get verbally ugly? Jesus Christ himself, when confronting the people who were blaspheming him and rejecting him, rejecting God, called them a den of vipers, a bag of dead man's bones, a whitewashed tomb, the synagogue of Satan. Oh, that sounds like a little verbal abuse right there, don't you think? Yeah, how about we just shut the fuck up about verbal abuse, okay? There's no such thing. Obviously, you need to use discernment when you speak to your wife and your spouse so as to not agitate unnecessary conflict. Use discernment. But this idea that women are going to walk right alongside men in society in the battles that we're in, and we're going to achieve victories in those battles that we're in, but we're going to be limited in our ability to speak confrontationally. That's why political correctness is such an effective weapon. That's how it has dismantled society, is because we're constantly afraid of offending women. Because they're in the battle with us where they should be at home waiting for us to come home to help us recover. No, we've invited them into the battle. And it's because they're in the battle, we're so worried about offending them, we can't win the battle. Because they're in the workplace, we're worried about offending them, we can't be fully productive. When men are in fellowship with other men, we can speak bluntly about the sexual dynamics, the gender issues, the spiritual war, and the aggressiveness that we have to have in going out and confronting the synagogue of Satan. But then when you have a woman in the Bible study, and you say something like, yeah, women need to get out of the workforce, they need to concentrate on supporting men, giving him children, and helping him recover with his mission, not hers. Women shouldn't have a mission other than supporting men. That's literally why they were created. It's in the first chapter of the first book of the Bible. And when you're in a co-ed space trying to study the Bible and discuss gender roles, this is what happened to me last week. It was pretty amusing for me because I've become desensitized to this whole political correctness stuff. But, I'm in a co-ed Bible group, and we start talking about gender roles and whatnot. And one of the women asks, what do we think about women in the workplace? And so I give her the honest answer, the true answer, which is that women were not in the workplace for the first 350 years of America's 400-year existence. And they weren't in the workplace for thousands of years before that, and especially in Western society. And we became the most successful country in the world economically. We had a global hegemony in terms of our influence over the entire world. Our military, strongest in the world. We achieved that without women in the workplace. We didn't have 50% divorce rates, which are a partial result of constant temptation by intermixing men and women in shared spaces. When you have a difficult phase in your marriage, and then you go to work and your work husband or your work wife is there soothing you and saying, oh man, I can't believe he said that. I don't think he appreciates you. Do you understand how dangerous that is? This idea that we even have what are called work husbands, work wives. I know married couples who joke about this. And you can say, oh, that just means that they're confident in their marriage, that they're okay with their wife having a work husband because they know that she would never cheat on him. That may be true in that one relationship. Maybe their relationship is that strong, especially if it's in a healthy state. But what happens when that relationship gets blown a major, takes a major blow? What happens when you have a miscarriage, right? What happens when there's a death in the family? What happens when some kind of temptation arises that doesn't result in adultery, but results in some difficult conversations? The more possibilities for temptation that we surround ourselves with, it's just the law of nature. More people will fall to them. And so, whether it's separating men and women in the workplace, men and women in congregations, politics has to be male dominated for all the reasons I mentioned earlier about language and verbal conflict. Women can't handle it. It emasculates the entire discussion at hand when men can't use masculine language. When we can't actually proceed smoothly with conflict, calling people out for their bullshit when we need to, giving them a verbal lashing when they need it. It's like the whole thing about bullying, you know? We eradicated bullying from society. And how did that go? You have a whole bunch of autistic, aimless, introverted, and I mean literally autistic, but also socially autistic Gen Zers who are chronically online, chronically addicted to pornography. They're walking around with like Pokemon backpacks as late teens and 20s, Hello Kitty t-shirts, addicted to video games. What used to be the structure for adolescence was training for the fight. It was training women how to be good wives, run a household, be supportive of men, learn how to cook, learn how to sew, make your own clothing, learn home remedies for ailments. That used to be the women's education curriculum. And the men's education curriculum used to be go and get physically strong, read philosophy, read the Bible. The Bible was also part of women's education as well, but I'm just saying, men were pushed down the path of learning how to defend society and be physically capable. And now that we have said we don't need to do any of those things because you can be healthy at any weight, and we shouldn't talk about religion in the school, and talking about politics is too sensitive because we don't want to offend anybody, especially the women in the room. It's like, well, what are we even in the school for? To learn about sodomy and transgender rights. That's why kids go to school now. So, some major problems there. A little bit of a tangent. I saw another reel this morning about the public school system and what they're teaching them there, how to worship billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. It's basically glazing them, saying like, who would you rather work for? Isn't it so great that Elon Musk has done XYZ and that Jeff Bezos is doing XYZ? We really owe our lives to these billionaires who want to implant microchips into your brain and upload your consciousness to the cloud and turn you into a chimera of part animal, part human, part robot. Don't we owe a lot of respect to these individuals? People like Bill Gates, who want to depopulate the earth and give us literally as many vaccines as possible. Vaccinate everything. We have a vaccine for hunger now. We have a vaccine for sexual desire now. We have a vaccine for anything that you can possibly dream up. Any human behavior, we're going to have a vaccine for. And every single one of them is going to come with a whole slew of side effects that they will not disclose to you. And you'll be walking around like the toxic crusader. And we're already halfway there. All of these microplastics and nanoparticles that are inside of us. But anyway, public education, how it glamorizes and idolizes the billionaires who are destroying our country, raping the economy, enriching themselves, building shrines to themselves, perpetuating some of the biggest lies that have ever existed, such as the belief that Earth and humans on Earth are actually not the center of God's attention. In fact, we are a minuscule particle of dust in the infinite cosmos of eternity. That there might be entirely different intelligent species out there that we just don't know about that are equally as important, probably even more capable than us, probably with more advanced civilizations than us. And so we need your tax dollars to go find them, okay? Give it up, Goyim. We got to go build civilization on Mars. So anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for joining me, my fellow Goyim. It was a fun talk. Takeaways here are you got princess women and you got pioneer women. Find yourself a pioneer woman because that's the woman who wants to go and protect society with you. The princess woman wants to be the center of the cosmos, the center of all attention, your purpose for life. Everything should revolve around her. That's not what you're looking for. She'll make your life miserable. She will never be fully satiated. She will always need more. And you'll be on the hook for that for the rest of your life. You need to find a woman who is happy and fulfilled to have a roof over her head, food available for her to eat every day, a man who will do the same for her children, and a man who is fighting a righteous fight. Those are the qualifications for the pioneer woman. And the qualifications for a man to attract that kind of high quality woman are being engaged in the fight, being aware of the political situation that we're in and the spiritual situation that we're in, understanding why the economic situation is what it is, with the wages not keeping up with inflation over the last 60 years. You need to understand it's more than like greedy billionaires. Like if that's your understanding of the political situation and the economy,